Hello and welcome to the Institute for Civic Engagement and Democracy. Today we're going to be walking you through the process for service learning, and the application process will be shown to you briefly here, as well as explaining service learning and viewing a short video. What is service learning? Many of you will have already had the experience of working with service learning with another professor. Just a reflection on what is service learning, as you can see here from the slide. Service learning has a component of reflection as well as being academically rigorous and tied to the curriculum with your professor. So in order for your field experience to be true service learning, it has to have that reflective piece as part of the project. And here we have key characteristics of service learning for you to read. Following, we will be watching a short video, which is an example of a kindergarten class partaking in service learning. This example can easily be adapted for the preschool environment.
Why is our hospital project important?
The way we define service learning is that service learning is a method of teaching and a way of learning. So we look for an identified need that's really authentic, that kids can agree on. We design a service around it, and then we find ways to tie it to the curriculum, because the business of schools is really about delivering curriculum.
Also, you need to have projects that involve students in cooperative effort, where they are working together as a team, preparing them for later in life. Now, in this particular case, it's a kindergarten project, but you're never too young to participate in the team approach, focusing on what are they going to get out of it from the curriculum standpoint, the involvement of students in their community. Together, they can do this kind of a project.
It started out in my mind to be a much smaller project than what it ended up, but things have a way of snowballing, and you mean to do one thing and it turns into a lot of other things. And but I saw how the kids just loved it and everything about it, and it meant a lot to them, and so I really enjoyed doing it more than I really had thought at the beginning.
I received a call from a kindergarten teacher, Roberta Sullivan, asking if there were any special things that I could think we needed for children in the emergency department. She was working with her class and wanted to do something special for kids that are sick. And so Roberta and I did begin talking about it and created what you have here. The story that she told me is that she talked with kids about how did they feel about the hospital, and they shared stories about how scary it is, and when you're sick, how you are afraid of the doctors, you're afraid of the nurses, you're afraid of the place that you go, so that they started coming up with what are the things that would make you less afraid.
Our project went from November to June. We finished up in June, so it was really a year long, and of course it took a lot of effort and energy on our parts, but there's so much more to be gained from that, and it excites you. It, keeps you invigorated, seeing what happens with the kids and how excited they are about it, and you know that they're getting a lot from it.
One of the most delightful days of my career, I have to say, is the day that that entire class came and hung these pictures on the wall. Here were these proud children that really knew they were making a difference. The hospital administrator talked to them about how important this was and that they had helped kids for years and years to come by the work that they did.
It is kids in action working with the real world, and it tends to look messy, but the academics that can be involved in it are really, really strong and valid. And much of the learning takes place in reflection, and that's something that we're still learning about, the value of reflection. Not only in the classroom, but for teachers and for students, pre-reflection, post-reflection. What did you do? What did you hear? What did you smell? What did you feel? What did you learn?
And as far as fitting into the curriculum, I've always felt if I were going to do math one day, I do a math lesson that has to do with this project, measuring the room and then collecting the money and sorting it out and finding how much we spent and how much left we had to spend. And the art, we did tons of artwork. You're doing writing, so instead of about what's their favorite food or what are the fall leaves doing outside, we would do it about this project. So I think you can work everything in and not be leaving anything out. I never feel compromised in that way. I feel that you can do everything. In fact, I remember Kathy, the other teacher in the room, and I, laughing last year, said the only thing we didn't do was music, and we can sing on the bus on the way to the hospital. So we feel that we have covered everything, but given them more than that, because it's not just isolated material. It relates to real life problems, something a community really needed, and it was great to be able to do something about it.
The payoff comes in that these students are the young adults of this community. I anticipate them being the active parents and community leaders of our city in the future.
I guess the best story would be an elderly patient that I do remember being in this room who was in pain, who we were having trouble controlling her pain, and she looked up and suddenly the expression on her face changed, and I started to tell her the story of the 5-year-old children that put this room together and why they did it, and she smiled and said, "They did it for me too."
So now, after having watched the video, how is service learning tied in to the early childhood environment? And what are the benefits for early learners? As you can see from the list here, service learning actually covers all of the applicable NAEYC criteria. And this is something that most of you are already experiencing in the early childhood classroom, whether it be helping out those victims of a hurricane and gathering goods in boxes and sending that off to those in need, or baking for seniors, working on a community garden. This is something that you probably are already working on. So service learning is not necessarily something that's new, it's just a new term to rethink and refocus. Okay, so now we're going to look at what are some of the benefits of service learning for you as a student here at the college. In addition to the items listed here, service learning is something that can make a lifelong change in your professional experience, connecting with others that can help you connect to further positions down the road. So we're going to take a look at, we have a certificate and a letter that our department provides to you, personalized. Here you have a sample of our certificate. And here you have an example of our personalized letter for your portfolio and resume. Okay, so now before we start our application process, let's just review. You should have already received the Service Learning Clinical Experience Packet, the example shown here. Inside of this, you will be able to find answers to many of your questions, but most critically, you will find the list of department pre-approved preschools. So you're going to want to refer to that for selecting a preschool. And if you do have any questions that arise, please contact the Early Childhood Education Department directly. Now we're going to begin the application process. Please follow along with the web-based application instructions. First step, we're going to go to the ISED website listed here, and we're going to click on the icon for students. As you can see here, to fill out the new application, you're going to click on the icon reading Register Your Service Here. That will take you to the next window. Here in our login page, please be sure to click on number 1 and then enter your MDC ID and password. We are going to start a new service learning application, so go ahead and click on that button. Please select your class from your schedule listed and then proceed to agency selection. And now for your preschool selection, you're going to be forced to just click on the Submit Application and Finish, as the agencies are not listed in our database at this time. You're going to go ahead and add that information later. All right, now you're going to be printing out your contract and hour form, so just click here. Your contract is going to show with your information, your professor, your course ID. You're going to have this printed out, and you're going to fill in all of these boxes shown here in red. Your deadline for the contract will be set by your professor. Generally, that'll be 2 weeks after your course starts. You'll be turning this contract into your professor, who will then forward it to the ISED office at your campus. Here we have the hour report and agency evaluation example. And again, you're going to have your information there at the top. You will fill in where it's marked in red, your preschool information. You'll take this form with you each time you go to do your service learning hours. Make certain that you have a supervisor sign off. And at the end of your hours, you will go back and have your evaluation written in and signed off by a supervisor. This will be turned into your professor as well. Your deadline for the hour report and agency evaluation form will be set by your professor as well. If not, generally it is 2 weeks before the end of the term. Okay, so our last process will be to go back into the website like you did the first time. Click on the icon shown here of register for your service. So now we're going to be clicking on number 4. Number 4 is going to be your history and current registration. Go ahead and put in your MDC ID and password. So now we want to complete the survey. This is the page that you will be at, and as you can see on your right, there is a survey icon. Please click on that. Here you have our student satisfaction survey, which will take you 1 to 3 minutes to complete. Your deadline for this will be the same as your hour report and agency evaluation. This is also a required component for your service learning process. So now for a review, we have the steps here for service learning. So now we have concluded the service learning application process. And just to have you thinking on preschool service learning projects, there are a few examples set here. For further questions on the process for service learning, you can contact your local ISED office. Thank you for watching our video.